Hey, my name is Micah. I'm a student here at the New School, and today we're going to be talking about depth of field. What is depth of field? It's a very good question. Very simply put, it's the area that's in focus in your image. Now there's three things that affect depth of field. The first, subject distance. The second, focal length. And the third, aperture. Now we're going to get into all of that in a little bit while these guys back here get set up. But first I want to take you outside and show you the difference between a short depth of field and a long depth of field. First, we're going to show the long depth of field. If you see this picture, both the subject and the background are in focus. Now we're going to do the opposite. So this is the short depth of field. You can see that the subject is in focus, but the background is blurry, so it makes the subject pop out and it looks more professional. As I said before, there are three things that affect depth of field. The first is subject distance. The further the subject is from the camera, the longer the depth of field. You can see that everything in the background is in focus. Well, the closer I move to the camera, and the camera operator adjusts accordingly, you can see that I'm in focus, and the background is out of focus, creating a shorter depth of field. Now we're going to talk about how focal length affects the depth of field. Here I have a 20mm lens and a 50mm lens set up. The 20 on the bottom, 50 on the top. We're going to show you the different focal lengths. I'm going to start with the 20mm. 20mm you can see is a wider frame and a rather long depth of field. You can even see the pictures in the background in focus. Now we're going to go to the 50mm. The 50mm is a tighter shot and has a very short depth of field. You can see my hand going in and out of focus. Now, the longer the focal length, the shorter the depth of field, and the shorter the focal length, the longer the depth of field. Now we're going to talk about aperture. Aperture is how much light is coming into the camera. The more closed my aperture, the less light is coming into the camera. The more open my aperture, the more light is coming to the camera. Now, aperture also affects depth of field. As you can see, my aperture is all the way open right now, and the first computer is in focus, while the second computer is out of focus, so you see a very short depth of field. Now, if I close down my aperture and make a few adjustments, you can see that both computers are now in focus. So by closing down the aperture, I've created a longer depth of field. Now the challenge is to balance your subject distance, focal length, and aperture to create the depth of field that you want. Hope our tutorial was helpful. If you want any more information, check out newschoolalbany.edu and enroll today.